Okay, yesterday we had a really fascinating and challenging conversation from Tim Satfomasan. I've got it right 3 times in a row. I'm not going to try fourth. So very difficult name to pronounce. But Tim really gave us an interesting insight into culture and diversity and race. And I think he challenged us quite a bit. I felt really challenged by it. It actually made me uncomfortable. It was a good challenge. You know, are we doing enough here? Are we paying it lip service? Are we just saying we're doing it and we're not, you know? It's a difficult place to be. So, and we need to get this clearly in our minds, and I'm rather hoping you people have it more clearly in your mind than I have in mine. So we're going to talk about it in action now. Craig North is he's the head of the National Indigenous Pastoral Enterprises, or the Indigenous Land Council Corporation. And this is really diversity in action. This is mixing diversity with commercial outcomes means good leadership. So please welcome Craig North.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Craig North. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the National Indigenous Pastoral Enterprise. I just want to thank everyone and thank the event organisers for the invitation today, and thank you for the warm welcome. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land in which this gathering is held today. Some of you might not be aware of the work of the Indigenous Land Corporation or its agribusiness subsidiary, the one that I work for, NIPE, if I can use acronyms, and the diversity of outcomes we get for Indigenous people. So with that in mind, I thought I'd do a quick overview of the Indigenous Land Corporation, and then I'll move on to the work of the National Indigenous Pastoral Enterprise. At the end of the presentation, I'll be more than happy to take some questions or discuss any matters that I've presented here today. Firstly, to the Indigenous Land Corporation. So the ILC is a Commonwealth statutory body that was established about 20 years ago. It was established in response to the Mabo case and as a result of the Native Title Act that came in about 1994, I think it was. So, and I think what clearly came from the Mabo decision and the establishment of the Native Title Act, that there was still not going to be opportunities for many Indigenous Australians to enjoy or claim ownership through the native title regime. And that's for a number of reasons to do with tenure and being able to demonstrate connection and all those sorts of things. But the ILC was established to address that particular issue and address that issue of dispossession, if you like. It had quite a large mandate, quite a wide mandate, but it drilled down to 2 main areas: the ability to acquire or purchase land for Indigenous people, and as a part of doing grant ownership to land as a part of a capacity building exercise, and also to help Indigenous people manage their land. And that's the word managers is quite a broad term, which help care, improve and develop that land. A lot of the land that we bought was in the early years of the ILC, so between 1995 and about 2002. Large amount of that was freehold land and pastoral leases via the open market. In fact, probably 99.9% of our land is acquired via the open market and has done so over the years. And to give you a feel, so over the 20 years we've acquired about 254 or thereabouts properties over for a variety of reasons, and divested about 170 of those back to Indigenous people. They've been acquired for a whole range of different reasons over the years. Some is to do with agribusiness, which I'll get onto in a moment. Some have been in relation to tourism businesses, and some have been drug and rehab centres, and you name it, there's a wide use there. But it all came down to achieving a diversity of outcomes and long-term outcomes for Indigenous people around economic, social, environmental and cultural benefits. So just in terms of how the ILC is funded, it's not budget funded through the government, if you like, even though it's a Commonwealth statutory authority. It's funded through returns earned off interest off this thing called a land account, which was established at the time the ILC was established 20 years ago. And to give you a picture of what that looks like, there was a land account fund established. The government put in money to this fund up until about 2004, where there's about $1.4 billion in this account. This account's reinvested and we get a return off the investment earned. And obviously that account, depending on how the the various markets are going has grown over the years. So I think today it sits at 1.9 billion, and we get a guaranteed income of about $45 million per year to run our business, to buy land, to help manage land and to operate, if you like. So I guess as a part of, besides buying land for a variety of reasons around social, cultural and environmental reasons, the two main industries that the ILC has invested in over the years has been around agriculture and tourism. I'll obviously get into the agricultural component in a minute, but tourism is probably one of our bigger portfolios, and you might have seen some publicity about ourselves in some of our tourism acquisitions. We purchased Ayers Rock Resort about 4 years ago, along with the management platform, Voyages Indigenous Tourism Australia. And that was for a number of reasons to invest. Not only it's an iconic, a representation of Australia and could be of Indigenous Australia, that it also gave an ability to really put investment in Indigenous employment in a growing industry. At that time, we bought the asset with about 5 Indigenous employees. Today, after 4 years, we have about 350 Aboriginal people working at the resort. A couple other areas, so that's a buy off the market, if you like, and established. And in the tourism area, we've worked with a number of communities, particularly in the Mossman Gorge area, where we built a new tourism centre there in conjunction with a community that employs 90% of Indigenous people today. So and that's about 70 people in the peak. So that gives you an idea of the sorts of investment in tourism, and I'll get on to the agriculture now. So my presentation today is about the work, or the diversity of work, of the National Indigenous Pastoral Enterprise. I became the CEO about 6 weeks ago, so very lucky to be in here, so no tough questions later on, people. So just a very quick historical snapshot of Aboriginal people involved. This is primarily in the cattle industry. So it's the point just being made here that Indigenous people have had a strong, proud history in the cattle industry, particularly in central and northern Australia. There was large amounts of Aboriginal people employed to do all sorts of essential tasks and services associated with cattle properties in these areas. And to give you a feel, in the late 1930s, there was something like 3,000 Aboriginal people employed in Northern Territory cattle stations alone, which is quite a large number when you consider that. As a part of that, obviously that large presence and employment has been critical to the part of the success of the industry in the Northern Territory, and still building today. I guess the diversity of outcomes wasn't just about the employment in those areas, it was about the ability for Aboriginal people to work on their country, to maintain their connection with the country, their culture and their language. And obviously that delivers a range of other social benefits with health and wellbeing. People might have seen in the media quite recently that there's the 50-year anniversary of the Wave Hill Walk-Off. Those sorts of events with equal wages and all that did provide a number of disruptions and impacted on some of those employment numbers. So to the situation now, today there's a really large amount or significant amount of effort into maximising Indigenous involvement in the cattle industry, and I guess in the agribusiness sort of industry more broadly, particularly in Northern Australia. This push is coming from Indigenous people themselves, their desire to capitalise on the opportunities in their land, from government agencies, from outside investors, from private companies, including my company, the National Indigenous Pastoral Enterprise. There seems to be a good objective around wanting to create diversity of outcomes from Aboriginal involvement on these lands, not just in the cattle industry, but on a wide array of agribusiness opportunities that seem to be apparent at the moment. The reason for this involvement is as follows. One is the socioeconomic benefits that it provides for Aboriginal Australians, and that's largely around into paid employment. There's a need for a workforce and a growing workforce in rural and regional areas, and this is particularly in terms of the developing agribusiness potential of Australia and around central and northern Australia. I think Aboriginal people, and there's an opportunity for Indigenous land to play its part and a significant role in the demand for sustainable food, particularly for the Asian market, if you like. And I mentioned there before that there is a strong desire for Aboriginal landowners to bring their land in production, to establish enterprises that do provide new economic, social, cultural, environmental outcomes for their communities. So given the above, the diversity and the potential scope of these opportunities is looking particularly bright at the moment. And that's when you consider that Indigenous people themselves, and there's lots of figures kicked around, have controlling or legal interests up to 40% of the Australian continent. So that's a large amount of land where there's either legal or controlling interest in that at the moment. It's a little bit larger, that number's a little bit larger, towards 50% in Northern Australia itself. I guess against this background, we, NIPE, if you like, see that opportunity as to play a leading role to work with Indigenous people and landowners to better position them in the agribusiness industry and to support the development of new business and new Indigenous agribusinesses over the years to come. So just about our businesses a little bit. So our agribusiness portfolio started about 15 years ago, and it's made up of a network of about 14 businesses, and as you can see, they're primarily in Northern Australia, covering about 2 million hectares. We've done this either through lands that the parent company, the ILCs, acquired in the earlier days, where for one reason or another we weren't able to divest that, but nor did we want to see it leave the Indigenous estate. So we consciously put a large amount of investment into getting these lands in production. I guess why there's different colours in there, it just shows ones, the pink ones, if you like, or red ones, depending if you're colourblind or not, is ones that the ILC holds title to, and we operate a business on there. As I said, it's primarily cattle, and the blue ones is properties where we lease back from traditional owners, usually on a long-term 15-plus year lease, in exchange for a range of things: commercial lease fees, guaranteed jobs, infrastructure in their land and to improve value, and to look at other sub-businesses under that. So I'll just do a fly around of some of our properties to give you a feel of the operation. So the first one we've got here is up near west of Chillago, Merida Station here. This is about 29,000 hectares. We've got about 4,000 breeders on that. So that's one that we leased back from traditional owners there about 6 or 7 years ago. We move across to Northern Territory over here, over in Gumbullunya or Owen Pally. This is one where we're in a long-term lease, about 80,000 hectares. We're on this floodplain country where we've invested quite a bit, fencing infrastructure and waters to get the land in production. We carry about 5,500 cattle on there. That varies depending on the wet season and so forth. Associated with this community, or near the community, there's a little abattoir that we also leased as a part of leasing the cattle station. I think when we took on this property, it was processing about 3 animals per week through the abattoir. Now it's processing about 30 beasts per week. We've moved a little bit into buffalo as well, processing buffalo for other markets and all that. Primarily the domestic market too. Hodgson Downs in the Northern Territory. So this property is about 400,000 hectares. It's pretty rough country, but carries about 12,000 breeders there. As we head over to the west, Roebuck Plains Station, just near Broome. This is a property that we'd bought approximately 1999 and just divested it back to Yaru people. This is one where we certainly do have a mixture of outcomes and land uses on this place. When we divested it to Yaru, they weren't quite interested in the cattle operation at this stage and at this point in time, if you like, but very much interested in managing the environmental and cultural values on the land. So we were able to establish a healthy country plan and lease arrangements that reflected where cattle can be managed in a sustainable way, as well as the environmental and cultural values can be managed, obviously, for the longer term. So Roebuck here is quite a large one. It's about 280,000 hectares, and we've got about 16,000 cattle on there normally. These are sort of average numbers, if you like. Just next to Roebuck Plains Station is our export depot. This is a small freehold block that we bought a few years ago and developed a depot there. This is also divested to Yaru. We process something like about 70,000 head of cattle through there each year to go over to the Indonesian and Vietnam type markets. Just to be a little bit random, we do sheep as well. So this is an early acquisition of Murray Field down in Tasmania, of course, there. So it's a small station there that runs about 10,000 sheep. It's a single business unit there. It's just recently been divested to Weedapuna Aboriginal Corporation on a leaseback arrangement with exchange of jobs and investment over the next 15 years. Where are we going? We're back up at Cape York, Queensland. Now we are in some rough country. Crocodile Welcome was purchased about 1999. There's quite significant cultural arts on this property, the Quincan art sites and cave sites on that. We weren't able to divest this one, but we consciously put quite a bit of investment into this property. There's up near Laura there, for people that know that area. And we have a residential training centre on that place, about 10 beds, that we obviously run a training to employment program on a yearly basis. Just to give you a picture, out of the 14 businesses, 11 of those have residential training centres on those. So we've invested in some infrastructure there, so we're able to provide residential training throughout the year. Merida Station, that's further up near in the west of Cohen there. This came to us, it's not one that we acquired, but when people might be aware of the ADSIC Corporation many years ago, when it became defunct, I think it was 2005, this property was transferred to us, to our ownership, so we've invested in that. Besides having a breeding station there, about a year ago, we've now got a registered carbon project on this property, so we're selling credits to the open market. So I think we're producing about 17,000 credits there per year. So some of that's back to the government's emission reductions fund. That's sort of just demonstrates some of that diversity there on management. And the last one here, I've just got here's Merida Station. So that's back over the west, but east of Broome there, where I showed you Roebuck Plains. So Merida there, we're just in the throes of discussing divestment now. It's about 400,000 hectares with about 17,000 head of cattle there at the moment. So just a few more stats. So with these agribusinesses, as you can tell, they're largely focused on beef production in Northern Australia, and we support about 80,000 head of cattle across this area. And if you look up the numbers, apparently that makes us the 15 biggest cattle producer in Australia. Not that that's our biggest driver, but just give you a feel for scale. So I've touched on a few of these, but we obviously operate at the live export depot out of Port of Broome there, or near the Port of Broome, I should say. We've established that domestic cattle and buffalo abattoir at Gumbalanya. We've got a fine merino wool business in Murrayfield there, and we've got carbon enterprises located on a few of our businesses, like Maripa that I showed you there. I've also got some standalone properties in the Northern Territory where it's solely about savanna fire burning projects to produce carbon credits. I just mentioned before that on 14 of our places that we have, on 14 of our places, 11 of those we have residential training centres. This is the one on Roebuck Plains Station, the sort of amount of investment that we've put in there. I think it's about 8 years now that, in addition to our investment in land and the businesses, we've put investment in infrastructure and operational costs to establish these centres, running Aboriginal employment programs for that time. Today we're at 70% Aboriginal employment. That started at something like 30% or thereabouts some 8 years ago. And that's just not about building our workforce. We do that as a part of building workforces for other employers, and we look to have agreements with other producers in that way that see an outcome through employment after they leave our properties. What can I say about that? The only other thing is that I guess the focus of our training over the years has been largely around entry-level training, so that's basic skilled labour, skilled training. In the last 2 years, we're moving away from that. Rather than doing quantity, we're moving to quality, if you like, which is more about career progression and career development within the company. We think there's huge value in having more Aboriginal people at that property manager level and in administration or the management team where I'm working. So obviously by operating these businesses in rural and remote areas, we can assist Indigenous people with increased investment in infrastructure and employment and career development opportunities. And as a part of this employment focus, if you like, we're very focused on providing industry-based employment skills development, assisting Indigenous landowners bring their land back into production whilst they manage their cultural, environmental and social values, and creating some enterprises or businesses that can obviously benefit through our operations. Part of this process too is about developing Indigenous landowners' capacity to take on ownership of these lands or the business over time, or transition, or that can be in a transition phase over time. Further opportunities around diversifying income sources on agricultural land through carbon farming is certainly operational on our places, and we have a few more plans in the wind, if you like, to expand that further. I guess with that diversity of land use and enterprise, we can obviously offer Indigenous people and workers a whole range of options in terms of work in the industry and across our operations, as well as managing our land sustainably, conserving our natural capital base on which our agricultural operations depend. This photo here I touched on before about the Yaru Ranges when we divested Roebuck Plains Station about 2 years ago. A large part of that was making sure that we are managing the aspirations of the traditional owners, as well as the interests of the pastoralists on our operations. This is the example, if you like, where Yaru was very focused, at least in the next 5 to 10 years, about managing the environmental values on Roebuck Plains Station and cultural values. We made an investment in that particular Indigenous protected area to help this grow into the future and to get the protection that it needs and management it needs, of course. So I guess in looking forward for our company, if you like, we're certainly embarking on a growth strategy. This is the company of National Indigenous Pastoral Enterprise, and we're keen to invest in more agribusinesses and recognition of the role that Indigenous people can provide in terms of economic opportunities and to the economy. And I guess, as I mentioned before, we're quite mindful that the percentage of Aboriginal land being held at the moment is something that we should look to capitalise on. And we have the view that the basic ingredients are there about land, people and opportunity to help these or capitalise on these agribusiness opportunities. So we certainly want to grow and diversify our business platform, but we want to do it in a way that's sustainable and can provide a diverse or wide range of outcomes for Indigenous people, and they're not necessarily always cultural outcomes. That will certainly be a challenge for us going forward, as it has been for the last 15 years. As a part of this growth strategy, we certainly want to expand or bring more Indigenous land in production, and that's going to involve us having more or forging more partnerships and commercial relationships with Indigenous landholders, and of course on industry players that we've already been fortunate enough to engage today. We certainly have to look at the flexibility at the way that we do our business. You probably picked up from my earlier sort of comments that traditionally we've entered into long-term leases with Indigenous or Aboriginal landholders to enable these operations, but we think that there's stronger possibilities or options, if you like, of entering into joint venture partnerships or equity partnerships to open up some capital and also to raise or build capacity of Indigenous business, so there's a bit more skin in the game, if you like, so a bit more sharing of the risk and reward approach. We certainly, as a part of doing that, we've got a 10-year strategy in place, which is currently getting updated with some of these opportunities at the moment, but we certainly will have a vision of being the partner of choice in growing and realising the potential of Indigenous agribusiness and the carbon economy across the Indigenous estate. If we can successfully grow our business and those other Indigenous players in the sector, we can create the ability to employ more Indigenous people, and that's also through new Indigenous businesses. This in turn helps bring economic development, creates intergenerational wealth, and generally realises the potential of Indigenous estate to deliver a wide range of benefits. We'll increasingly look at other established and emerging markets, and certainly opportunities for Indigenous businesses to take advantages through any supply chain opportunities that have come about. We recognise that developing and realising that strategic vision is a huge undertaking, so we're certainly going to have to be clear-eyed, and we're certainly going to have to be realistic that we can't be all things to all people. I guess as my job, I'm certainly wanting to get the strategy right, and I think importantly I want to make sure that the company has the culture right, and I think we've heard this morning, people focus on the importance of people in the company. And I think I've heard this saying before, and I still have it now, I think culture trumps strategy every day. So that's something we'll certainly be working on. We'll be certainly focused on the dollars that we'll be spending and the returns that we'll be looking from those investments, and on our measurements on how we are performing, not just about dollars and cents, but how we grow Indigenous employment and businesses across our portfolio will certainly be crucial to our success. We'll be looking to capitalise not only on the growing beef opportunities, but opportunities in the area of aquaculture and horticulture, which are quite new areas for us, but certainly on our radar to move into in the next couple of years. As I mentioned, we're investing in the carbon economy and producing and selling carbon credits. We see this as a growth area or a long-term investment for us into the future, because not all land out of that 40% I talked about before is going to run a viable agricultural operation, but some of those lend themselves to other enterprises, such as producing carbon credits through savanna fire burning. Certainly we'll have to be prepared to invest in joint ventures and quality infrastructure, and recognition there is at times need for patient capital. I want to make sure we take up these opportunities, because there are growing agribusiness opportunities and market opportunities, as well as significant projects on the table at the moment to increase food production, particularly in Northern Australia. It's important for us and our company to position Indigenous people to take these opportunities as they arise. Part of that is going to be brokering business collaborations with Indigenous landowners, as I spoke about before, but it's also going to be about brokering relationships with investors and industry to make this a success. I'm certainly looking forward to talking more with industry and potential investment. I'm certainly excited about the chapter ahead for Indigenous agriculture. Thank you.
Let me just sit up here on one of the stools. How good was that? You know, agriculture is a driver for social and cultural change. You know, very interesting. I mean, I understand there's an economic driver underneath all of it, but you know, the overarching driver is about social and cultural change. It's very impressive. Okay, any questions? Any discussion that you'd like to have with Craig? You always ask questions. From the Northern Territory, we're going to get a question.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Shanal Basnaik, I'm the CEO of Northern Territory Farmers Association. On your map, which you displayed with all your properties, there's a lot of stuff in Northern Australia, which is great, because you know, a bunch of us here from Northern Australia are very, very happy about that. But we're looking at is, you know, there's an entire section in Southern Australia. What are your plans for what you want to do there? And you've got some of the brightest, smartest young farmers in Australia here. How can you, and what sort of strategies are you looking at in terms of working with them, and how can you help them enable the partnership with you guys?
About Southern Australia moving into you know, lands in Southern Australia, we certainly don't have specific plans, but we've got our eyes open to it. I think there's even here in New South Wales, there's large tracts of Indigenous land through the New South Wales Land Council that I reckon there's some opportunities there to work in the agribusiness space. We're actually in discussions with New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council about how NIPE can bring its expertise to get land in production, like I talked about that Northern Australia there. We're certainly not ruling out, we don't have specific plans, it's just the Northern Australia is a bit of a product of history, if you like, but we're certainly looking at some areas in South Australia itself. We've been working with the APY community there in northern parts of South Australia, and looking at some horticulture investments with some current producers there to look at some equity shares in that. It's certainly on the table. We just don't have a specific sort of proposals at the moment, but we do have our eye on diversifying ourselves just in terms of market terms as well as presence in Australia. The second one about the what can I get from you guys? I guess one of the things that we certainly are looking to do in the future that I'm keen to get some advice on is that in our mind with Indigenous held land, there's some good assets there. And sometimes we've been approached by industry because they see these assets and how do we get this in production? and we feel that, you know, sometimes it's a myriad of issues to work through, some of the Aboriginal political issues, to broker deals, to give confidence in investment, and also that lends itself to also confidence in raising capital to invest in Aboriginal land. So I guess I'd be interested in, generally, would there be, is someone like NIPE, my company, does people see it as an instrument, if you like, if I can use that blunt word, as an instrument to help facilitate business with some Indigenous land to help a growing agricultural industry? And how would that relate to raising capital or securing capital to make this investment happen?
It could really be a crowd-funded thing, couldn't it? It'd be one of those things that I think, you know, the community would support, you know. It's a wide range of options there. What do people think? Sal?
I'll ask something. How much of the estate, for want of a better word, you know, that's in the hands of communities is run down and needs investment, and what are the key challenges in finding the right sort of investment? Yeah. Investment partnerships.
Yeah, it's probably a bit hard for me to give a figure on what is run down. I guess the issue is about how much of the estate or the lands is a viable proposition, I think. And some of those is about aspirations of the community to turn that viable, or those lands, into a viable proposition. Each community, each traditional owner group have different views and expectations about all that. But I don't have exact percentage on that, but it's certainly something that we're working on. I had the question the other day through an interview about how much Indigenous land is available for agricultural production. So I think that's something I've got to go do some more work on as a part of our growth strategy. But I certainly can come back with some answers, yeah.
Okay, Sal, last one, then we'll keep going. Sam?
Talked a lot about integrating what's done overseas and bringing other experience into Australian agriculture. You know, let's not reinvent the wheel. And I was just wondering, in New Zealand, the government aimed to double their productivity or their production of agricultural produce. I think it was by 2020, and they'd already done it. And one of the strategies that they used, and I was just wondering if you guys had looked at this at all, is that they went and they engaged their Indigenous community over there. And I understand there's some obviously big cultural differences, yeah, and they I suppose created partnerships and created a model to get better utilisation out of that land for the whole economy and obviously creating jobs and stuff. I was just wondering, have you guys been looking overseas to other models that may have worked well for other countries?
The short answer is no. I think we should. In terms of performance and just some of the things that you're talking about with New Zealand, we ourselves were involved in a benchmarking study with some other bigger corporate producers, if you like, as a part of benchmarking productivity. It's been running for about 4 years now. We're certainly wanting to use those sorts of results and that group to use those learnings to work on other Indigenous land, if you like, to bring that into production. But not sort of looking at other models overseas per se, no.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Craig. That was just wonderful. Can everybody thank Craig North?